myself Rivi and Dr. Kiran Yadav. In this session, I will discuss about inertia and Newton's first law of motion. So I will start the session with discussion about inertia. Then the Newton's first law of motion is based on inertia. So after discussing inertia, I will discuss about the first law of motion. So let us see what is inertia. The property of body that resists change in a body's condition of rest or of motion with constant velocity. Or I can say the tendency of an object to persist in its state of rest or in uniform motion in a straight line is the inertia. So suppose we have a body which is at rest, so it will tend to be, or it will want to be in rest until and unless an external force acts on it. And if a body's is in motion, then it will want to remain in motion until and unless an external force acts on it. So the body or an object wants to persist in its state, whatever the state is. It can be rest or it can be motion, so the body will want to persist in that state. This property of a body is known as inertia. The concept of inertia was given by Galilei. Now let's discuss the Newton's first law of motion. According to Newton's first law of motion, an object at rest will remain at rest unless acted on by a force. An object in motion continues in motion with the same speed and in the same direction unless acted upon by a force. This law is often called the law of inertia. You can clearly see from the statement of this law that it is based on the property of inertia. That is why it is also called the law of inertia. Now let me explain you more precisely what does this law means. This means that there is a natural tendency of objects to keep on doing what they are doing. All objects resist change in their state of motion. Okay, so if an object is moving, it will want to keep on moving, and if an object is at rest, it will want to keep on at rest. So an object at rest will remain at rest, an object in motion will remain in motion. This law is the same reason why you should always wear your seat belt. Okay, so when we are traveling in a bus and the driver suddenly use brake, then we feel a jolt. जैसे ही ब्रेक लगता है, आप एक धक्का पुश करते हो या आप आगे की तरफ जाती है आपकी बॉडी. गौर करिएगा इस बात पे. योर लोअर बॉडी डज नॉट फील एनीथिंग बट योर अपर पोर्शन ऑफ योर बॉडी फील्स अ जॉल्ट. आपकी जो ऊपर की बॉडी है वो आगे की तरफ जाएगी, आपके पैर वहीं पे रहेंगे, आप अपनी सीट पे ही रहोगे, बस आपका सर चेस्ट वो आगे की तरफ जाएगा. सो आपकी बॉडी क्या थी? मोशन में थी. जैसे जैसे बस मूव कर रही थी, योर बॉडी वाज आल्सो इन मोशन. सडनली एक फोर्स लगा, ब्रेक लगा, जिससे कि मोशन स्टॉप हुआ, बट योर बॉडी स्टिल वांट्स टू बी इन द स्टेट ऑफ मोशन. तो उस पर एक पुश लगता है आगे की तरफ. इसलिए ऐसा होता है कि जैसे ही सडनली ब्रेक लगते हैं, आपकी बॉडी आगे की तरफ जाती है, बिकॉज वो मोशन में थी और वो मोशन में ही कंटिन्यू रहना चाहती है. सो इस झटके से या धक्के से बचने के लिए यू शुड ऑलवेज वियर योर सीट बेल्ट. The mass measures the inertia in our body. The more inertia a body has, the more difficult it is to start moving. It will also be more difficult to stop the body if it is originally in motion. Clear? Inertia is proportional to mass. Big mass resist changing their motion more and smaller mass as compared to the smaller mass. So if we have a heavy object and it is in a state of rest or in a state of motion and we want to change that state, then we will have to apply a lot more force as compared to another object which is relatively lighter in mass. A lot of inertia, the large train resists changing its motion. So heavy objects के केस में हम train का example consider कर सकते हैं, and for light object we can consider the example of a stroller which has a very little inertia. The small baby carriage has very little resistance to change in motion. So here you can see the two persons in a fight और कुश्ती या जो भी ये गेम खेल रहे हैं. So one person is very heavy as compared to the other person. So the heavier person has more inertia as compared to the lighter person. Suppose the lighter person wants to move the heavier person, so he will push that person. तो क्या आसानी से पुश कर पाएगा? नहीं. जो भारी इंसान है उसको पुश करने के लिए बहुत ज़्यादा ज़ोर लगाना पड़ेगा. बट अगर वहीं द हैवी पर्सन वांट्स टू पुश द किड, या जो कम वज़न का इंसान है उसको पुश करना चाहे वो, तो वो क्या है, आसानी से पुश कर देगा हाथ से धक्का लगा के. सो बेसिकली this is because of inertia, and inertia is directly proportional to mass. A passenger sitting in the rear of a bus claims that he was injured when the driver slammed on the brakes, causing a suitcase at the front to come flying towards him. If you were the judge in this case, what disposition would you make and why? Clear? जैसे धक्का लगता है या बस में जब सडनली ब्रेक्स लगते हैं तो क्या होता है, कई बार हम ऊपर जो बैग्स रखते हैं जहाँ पे हमारा लगेज रखने का स्पेस दिया हुआ होता है, वहाँ से कुछ लगेज नीचे आ जाते हैं. क्यों? बिकॉज वो ऑब्जेक्ट मोशन में था. जैसे जैसे बस मूव कर रही थी वो ऑब्जेक्ट भी मूव कर रहा था. सो दैट ऑब्जेक्ट वाज इन मोशन, एंड व्हेन सडनली ब्रेक्स वर अप्लाइड, दैट ऑब्जेक्ट स्टिल हैड द टेंडेंसी टू बी इन द स्टेट ऑफ मोशन. तो क्या होता है, वो स्टिल मोशन की स्टेट में होता है. ब्रेक्स लगे, बस तो आ गई मोशन से रेस्ट पे, बट ऑब्जेक्ट्स कुछ सेकंड्स बाद मोशन से रेस्ट पे है, तो कुछ सेकंड तक वो मोशन की स्टेट में होता है. दैट्स वाई वो नीचे आके गिर जाता है. Clear? I hope now the concept of inertia and Newton's first law of motion is clear to you all. So that's all for this session. Thank you.